everyone, and welcome to this week's episode of Ask the Expert. I am so excited to be here with my co-host, Teresa Ream, and we're looking forward to sharing today's expert with you. We encourage you to make sure that you connect with not just Teresa and I, but you really connect with our guest and know that what happens here is just like a very minute amount of the expertise and the brilliance that she has to share with you. So you want to make sure that you connect with her everywhere, right? So that you can actually stay in touch and learn a little bit more. And most importantly, that you find the one thing, even if it's 1, 2, 3 things to implement in your business. That's what it's all about. That's why we have these experts. And we want to thank our sponsor, right? The Professional Women's Network of Monterey. And you can find more about them at www.pwnmonterey.org. And Teresa is going to tell us a little bit about our guest. So over to you, Teresa.
Thank you, Patty. Welcome, Cori. I'm so excited to be interviewing my publisher. I'm very proud of her too. Let's get started. Today with Cori Wamsley, we're going to be talking about publishing that book that you've always wanted to write. And Cori is the CEO of Aurora Corialis Publishing. She works with leaders who have transformational stories to share. She helps them quickly and easily write and publish a book for their brand that helps them create a legacy and be seen as an expert while building a relationship with the reader. Cori has 18 years experience as a professional writer and editor, including 10 years with the Departments of Energy and Justice, and 4 years as the executive editor of Inspiring Lives magazine. She also wrote 8 fiction books and 1 nonfiction book, The Spark Method, How to Write a Book for Your Business Fast and Contribute to 2 anthologies. Her newest book, Braving the Shore, was published in June of 2022, and I so much enjoyed it. It was intriguing, very intriguing. And welcome, Cori.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Oh, we're so excited to have you. So we're going to jump right in. So I love everything that Teresa was sharing about you. I think that's really great. I actually publish a magazine myself, of which Teresa writes for. So I love that. So what would you say, Cori, is the number one thing that differentiates you from other people in your industry? You know, there's a lot of publishers out there, you know, some that do a lot of different things, but what is the one thing that differentiates you?
Yeah. So I agree. I've met a lot of publishers and everybody has their own specialty. Our specialty is story. Whenever I work with a client as a coach, we work with them on the story, making sure that it really connects with the reader, and writing it in a way that makes it really interesting. I have a client who I've been working with and she keeps saying, is my story interesting? Is my story interesting? And I'm like, yes, we've got you on that. Because you can come with a really interesting story, but there's a certain way you need to write it that really helps connect with the reader, that helps move the story along at a good pace. So you're not just kind of dragging through or going off on tangents and all that stuff. So that's really what our focus is that you have a really good story. So you have a good book that's interesting to the reader and connects with them so they can say, oh, no, I love this story. That sounds like something I've been through too. I really want to work with you, or I would like to book you as a speaker, or, all those other things, the wonderful magic that comes from books.
I think that's really true. Story is everything, right? Everything. It doesn't matter whether it's personal or business. So what's the percentage of the people that you work with that write fiction versus nonfiction? Do you lean more one way than the other?
Yeah, we're almost exclusively nonfiction. So most people have their true stories that they're sharing. We do a little bit of memoir, but most of what we do is a story with a big message. So you tell your story, but then you come back at the end and say, this is something I want the reader to understand. This is how I feel after I've gone through this. I've healed from this story, and now I want to share the message with you. So that's most of what we do. We've had a couple fiction authors, myself included, because that's always been fun for me. I love writing fiction. So I will publish fiction that is a big story. Teresa shared my book, Braving the Shore. That one is a story about coming home, about, connecting with your family, about figuring out who you are and where you actually want to be in life, and deciding, I was on this path. Do I want to keep on this path, or do I want to completely veer off to the side and take another path? So that's what the big message is for that book. And, as long as a book has a big message, it's something I'm open to talking to the author about.
I think that makes a lot of sense. Like, I have always believed, as somebody in the marketing space, I believe there's an art to telling a story, right? And as a speaker too, right? A lot of times somebody can tell a story and then people will get so caught up in their story, they can't see them in their story, right? And it's really
Yeah.
important to tell a story, whether you're doing it in a book or from the stage, that people resonate with the story and what the message is as it applies to them or somebody they may know or love. And that you don't get so caught up in the story that they think, oh yeah, that's a great story, but they don't see anybody else in it. So I really feel like there's an art and a science of that. So I love that that's what you specialize in, because I think it is probably something that people don't get because we get caught up in our own story, right? So having somebody objective that can help with that, I think, is super important.
Yeah.
Yes, and I
completely
liked
agree.
how she kind of put her, it seemed like I kept on seeing Cori in her book somewhere, just little pieces of her, which really kept it interesting since I knew her. I was really dazzled by the book, and I'm not a nonfiction, a fiction reader, so it really kept me going.
Well,
Well,
thank
that
you.
says a lot for you,
Hear
Cori,
that.
right there. So what would you say are 3 to 5 words, so not sentences, but 3 to 5 words that best describe the value you bring to the marketplace? Like, how sometimes we see a pattern of things that people will say to us over and over again, right? There's kind of a pattern. So what are 3 to 5 words that, that best describe the value you bring to the marketplace?
Definitely storytelling. I think that that's a big thing that we bring. Connection, the legacy, you know, helping people bolster their experience, their expertise. Yeah, I think that's kind of the bulk of what we do, is all of those pieces. Because I think sometimes people think about a book and they just go, oh, we're just going to check this off the list. But having that as a legacy, as something that you can use for brand building, a connection tool, like all those pieces, and the storytelling, I think those are the most important pieces of what we bring to the table when we're talking about books.
I think books are so important because it really is like a giant business card. It's also something that will get you on podcasts. It will get you on stages, right? So to me, if from a marketing point of view, if you have a book, you should be a speaker. If you're a speaker, you should have a book, right?
Yeah,
Those kind
definitely.
of things kind of go hand in hand. So, as an expert, what would you say is the best testimonial you've ever received from a client?
Oh my gosh. A lot of our testimonials sound the same, because it's usually people come to us and they're like, I don't have a clue what I'm doing. And then I work with them and they're like, oh, there really is a story here. We get through the process and they're like, oh my God, I have a book in my hands. Like that, it's always that, like, they had an idea, they wanted to do it, but there's always some piece of them that said it wasn't possible. Um, and I mean, there are like 8 billion people on this planet, and a very small percentage, I looked up the number the other day, I think it's like 1 out of every 8,000 people has published a book. So it's a pretty small percentage of people. So a lot of people look around and they say, I don't know any authors. Like, I know tons of authors just because of what I get to do. So to me, it's like, that's a normal thing. But for many people, it's not. And they're sitting there saying, how can I do this? I don't know what to do. And then they come and work with me, and a few months later, they have a book in their hands. So that's typically what the testimonials say, is like, I had no idea what I was doing. I worked with Cori, and here we are. I'm a published author.
Well, what I liked about you is you were accessible. You were a real person, shoulder to shoulder with all of us, there daily with us, talking with us, meeting with us, even, holding a retreat that I attended last month. It was amazing. And I really like that accessibility. And when you have that as a writer, you feel like you can do more. It's like that favorite teacher. You can do more with that person.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. And I think it's important too, like, I connect with every one of my authors. There's nobody that I say, all right, I'm passing you off to them, and then I never talk to them again. I think it would be really ridiculous for me to say, oh, I want you to open up and share your story and, connect with everybody. And then I'm sitting over here like, I'm gonna keep you at arm's length. So I do
No.
try to get out there and make sure that, like, if I have a workshop, I'm involved with everybody who's there. I connect with them. I talk to them about their story. And I think that's really important for people to feel comfortable sharing too.
I think that is important. I know for me, um, I actually have written 5 books, but I also have been involved with 2 of the people who have been involved with you in books from a marketing point of view on my side. And so I've actually got to kind of go through the process as what they were doing, but also from the marketing point of view as being their marketer.
Mhm.
So I feel like you have a really great process that you go through, and I think it is really good. So I love that.
Thank you.
I think that as an expert for you and as a publisher, I really want to say, I think it's important to know what not to do as it is to know what to do, right? Like I know for
Yeah.
me, I kind of want to know what's the myths or what's the mistakes we should avoid as well as what should we do. So
Yeah.
here's what I would like you to do. I would love you to share with us one mistake or a myth or something that you could tell somebody, maybe something that they think is that's not actually, like bust that myth, right? Or some mistake that you see people who want to write a book. And then after that, I would like you to share what is a great business tip or resource if you do want to write a book. So
Okay.
let's talk about what not to do, and then let's kind of share some value about what they should do.
Okay. So one of my favorite ones, because there are a lot of them, we could talk all day about this, is everybody loves drama, right? Like you watch the news and it's one thing after another after another. I've heard people say, if it bleeds, it leads. So everybody thinks I have to have some crazy story and really dive into the drama of this story. And that's what's going to get people to read the book and connect with me. And that's not always the case. A lot of people have stories that involve traumatic experiences, abuse. They've been through some sort of a disaster, things that can really be triggering to a reader who has been through the same sort of thing. And you don't want to do that. I did work with an author who became a widow when she was younger. She was in her 20s and her husband passed just unexpectedly. And one of the things that we talked about was how we're not going to talk so much about that trauma that she experienced as some of those moments. So we went with moments where she was sitting and thinking, and this is how she was reacting. And she couldn't eat her breakfast the next day because breakfast was his favorite meal. So some of those little snippets. So you're not diving in and seeing, the anguish that she was going through getting that phone call. You're seeing how she navigated afterwards. And she's somebody who's had a long time to heal and talk about this. And she's a grief counselor now herself. So she knew how she could speak to people about it. And that's something that you have to be very conscious of. You want to know how you can speak to people about things that could be really triggering. You want to make sure that they understand enough that, yes, there's that connection. Yes, she gets me. Yes, I remember I had those same sort of moments too when somebody passed. But you don't want them to go into that trauma of experiencing it again, because that is a really hard thing for people to do. And sometimes they might just put your book down and say, I can't even finish reading this, even though she clearly gets me. So
I think that sometimes your mess is your message, right? So whatever thing has happened to you, your mess, whatever, how that was good,
I love
bad,
that
ugly,
saying.
is definitely becomes your message, right?
Yeah.
But at the same time, it is so right. I've had a couple things happen to me, and to this day, I still don't like when people like bring them up in something. I'm thinking, man, we should really be cognitive that these could trigger people, right? And so I get that that's what you're saying. So what would you say would be something like some valuable tip, resource, or something right now that we want to make sure that our audience walks away with?
Sure. So if you want to go to like my YouTube channel, I have videos up on there. They're also in my blog or on my Facebook. Everything is captured in YouTube though. So if you go to my YouTube channel, I interview every author that I publish. So you get to talk about, or you get to listen to them telling about their story and a little bit about the book process too. Some of them talk about like how they ended up writing their story, some of the challenges that they went through writing it, because there are always challenges. Even professional writers are challenged telling their own story. So those are really good resources. And then I also give tips like what I was just talking about how not to traumatize your reader, how to share stories that may not be full of joy. You may not, be really happy sharing this story. A lot of stories are great and they're very happy and have a beautiful ending, but then there are stories that are really difficult. Talking about, the hope at the end of the story. So those are the kind of things that I share in my videos.
That's fabulous.
Cori, I thought that your tip of what not to share and going to the whole story was excellent. It was almost like you were cutting to a scene in the
Yeah.
movie. So it allowed us to cut and go. I really like that tip.
Thank you.
I like that you actually have a YouTube channel so people can go there and get all kinds of, short information of what they need. So Cori, what do you love about your business right now? Like, what are you loving? What's next for you? Like, what do you love?
Oh my goodness. So we actually just had a big author event over the weekend, and that is one of the things I love is being able to showcase my authors, help them connect with other people, connect with each other, because those kind of relationships just end up growing your business, your brand, all those things. So that's one of the big things that I really love. Exciting stuff going on right now. I really love working with people telling their stories. And I have a couple coaching clients that just came in that we're starting on like what their story is, how we want to share this. One of them has a group book. So we're talking about like, okay, how are we going to have, 20 different stories, but they all have that same theme. And that's fun stuff for me. I like being able to sit down and map out a book with a person and then dive in and say, all right, if you've written a chapter, congratulations, let's get in and workshop this.
Those
are fun.
That is awesome. I don't know if you guys can hear the lightning and the thunder right here. That is just,
I'm so
I was going to
jealous.
bust down my window. It's like,
You don't get that in California very often.
Oh, wow.
So that is just really great information. And now we're getting ready to go to our lightning round. Speaking of lightning, right? And so Teresa, like you have some lightning round questions for her.
Yes, we know what time it is, Patty. It's that lightning round where we ask our experts questions and we want a brief 15-second short, sweet answer. So let's go. This is fun. Cori, what is your go-to productivity hack?
Shutting my door. I just shut the door and everybody's gone.
It's so simple, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. And sometimes we just, especially with kids, we feel so guilty about shutting that door. It's so crazy.
Yeah. They know now the door's shut. It's, you have to wave and say, can I come in?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
I would have kids and dogs banging and barking. If you could have any superpower, what could it be?
Oh my goodness. My gut feeling was invisibility.
That's go with your gut. That's what I always say. Go with your gut.
So let's go with that one. It would be fun to be able to go around and kind of listen to more stories, I guess, and be able to sneak out of a room when I need to.
Like Harry Potter and the cloak of invisibility. I love that part of it. Now, to better serve our audience and you, is there a question that we didn't ask that you would have liked us to ask that you want to answer?
Yeah, a lot of people ask me, well, how do I get started? Like a book is gigantic. How do I get started? And I always tell them, number one question, what is the story or book or, idea that you needed to hear most when you're going through your challenges? And a lot of times that gets you to hone in on like how I am connecting with my audience. So I think that's the most important question you can ask. What's the big message? What is it I want my reader to get from this book? And who am I talking to? Those three things really help shape what the book is going to look like.
Awesome. Thank you for that. Thank you. Well, thank you, Cori, for joining Patty and I on today's episode. It was amazing. And I'll give a shameless plug on the book that you helped us write. And now I'll turn it over to Patty.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Teresa. I just want to make sure that we give you a chance. Cori, what is your website so that people know where to go?
Sure. It's Aurora Corialis, and it's spelled with my name in it, Corialis, publishing.com.
Perfect. Thank you, Cori, so much for being here with us today, for joining us on the Ask the Expert show. We appreciate you sharing your expertise and experiences with us. And to our audience, thank you so much for joining us on Ask the Expert. Feel free to reach out to Teresa and I if you have any questions or suggestions for future episodes. We love hearing from our listeners, and we'd love to connect and continue the conversation. Again, make sure that you connect with Cori. She gave some great information. Thank you so much for sharing it so brilliantly, Cori. I really appreciate it. Thank you, Teresa, for being my favorite co-host ever. Right. And we'll see everybody next week on the next episode of Ask the Expert.